All right. It's time for that whole whose line club thing. I'm speaking just to the stream so that they can figure out what we're doing because we are playing Debate Extreme. Yeah, just for the stream's reference, since I was doing the intro and just muting myself in Discord, we are now moving on to Debate Extreme. We'll be trying to figure out what our topic is.
Okay, here's one. If you die in Canada, do you die in real life?
And red is for or against? Which one's red? Because I'm red, right? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. How about this?
Could you not hear me?
No.
I was asking which one's red. It's red for or against?
Who does anybody have a particular side they want to choose?
I don't really care.
Okay, red is yes. If you die in Canada, you die in real life. Blue is no. If you die in Canada, you do not die in real life. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
It's time for the debate extraordinaire. In this absolutely riveting radio series, we gather two teams, red versus blue, to debate issues that are hot topics in the current world of discourse. Today, we're discussing whether or not dying in Canada involves dying in real life. In the red corner, we have Mean Elephant, who says, yes, if you die in Canada, you die in real life.
That's right, I do.
And in the blue corner, we have Vitamin A Bullet, who says that no, if you die in Canada, you do not necessarily die in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems just absolutely absurd to me that you could die in real life if you died in Canada.
All right. Well, let's get cracking. First question goes to red team. On what basis do you state that dying in Canada engenders dying in real life?
Well, it seems a lot of things in Canada have real life consequences. For instance, Alaska's still really high up because we've got that whole Canada in between. That's just one example of a real life consequence from Canada. We've got plenty of examples of people going up to Canada and never returning. I can only assume they died there. I feel like it's natural to assume that dying in Canada, you die in real life because Canada's a real part of our real life.
All right. So you say that Canada is part of real life. Could you explain that a bit?
Yeah, like I said, Canada's a part of real life the same way everything's a part of real life. You know, if I drop a glass on my ground, the glass breaks in real life because, you know, the consequences from that are real. And the same really applies to Canada.
Okay. Blue corner. I'm going to ask you basically the same sort of question. On what basis do you feel that dying in Canada does not involve dying in real life? What's your argument that is the case?
Well, as we all know, Canada isn't really a real place. It doesn't exist within reality. It's very much a fantasy land where all kinds of crazy things happen, like universal health care and global warming not existing, hence why it's always so cold up there. Really, anything you can imagine as being a good thing is pretty much always associated with Canada, and there's a good reason for that. It's because there are no bad consequences in Canada. Those just don't exist. So really, if you die in Canada, I think the problem is is that the question itself is flawed, because you can't die in Canada. You're always living. You're always living at your best. That's the truth.
Interesting. So can you go into more detail about why you think the question is flawed?
Well, the question is flawed because you can't die in Canada, so you can't go under the assumption that if you die in Canada, you would die in real life, because you just can't die in Canada, period. I mean, as Mr. Red Person over here stated earlier, there's a lot of evidence of people going missing, but none of people dying in Canada. That just doesn't happen. I'm sure the reason why they're missing is probably for a reason that is actually good, something that they would prefer to have happen to them. Like, I don't know, being adopted by pixie fairies and being lifted up into the clouds. I mean, that could be a reasonable explanation.
I see. Now, Red, Blue brings up an interesting point about the question itself being flawed. Do you feel that the question itself is flawed? And if not, what is your response?
I do feel it's flawed. I feel like it implies that Canada is not a part of real life. It's the real problem. You can, of course, die in Canada as you can die anywhere else, but Canada is a part of real life. It's been, even if you're an American, it's a part of the real life.
I see. So can you go into more detail about the interplay between Canada and America?
Yeah, I just looked up the Wikipedia page for Canada-United States relations, and it turns out they're to the north of us. You can actually just walk right into Canada from the United States, provided that nobody sees you do it to stop you. And I think that's a prime example. I think that's a prime example of, since we'd all agree the United States is part of the real world, that Canada being accessible from the United States means that it's real as well.
Thank you. Now, Blue, how would the question, do you think, be changed in its framing or its implications if Canada were, in fact, a real place, according to you?
Well, I don't think that the question itself can work, because any mention of Canada should be spoken only highly of, and the word die or any form of that word just wouldn't be able to be associated with Canada. It's impossible. There's nothing negative at all about Canada. And something that Red mentioned, which is that it exists like to the north of the U.S. Well, I'm a U.S. citizen, so I mean, I don't believe it. I've never seen it, and I've gone all the way up north up to Chicago. I mean, that is pretty darn far, and I have never seen Canada. I really think that it is a fantasy land where everyone who's saying that it's reality, they're just a bunch of nonsense people. You know, they're like the people who say that we landed on the moon. I mean, come on, you can't really believe those guys, right?
Could you go into more detail about your supposed American citizenship?
Yeah, I live in the United States. Yeah. Not just the U.S., but also the United States, and somewhere in like the Midwestern area.
I see. Team Red, do you think that the American citizenship question has anything to do with the dying in Canada, dying in real life paradigm?
No, I think it is absolutely irrelevant. Blue Team's personal American citizenship, I think, has absolutely nothing to do.
Can you restate that?
I think blue team's American citizenship has nothing to do with whether or not Canada's a part of real life or whether dying in Canada affects your real life.
Blue, I know that in the interest of fairness here, what do you think about Red's position on your citizenship?
Well, I think really he's just denying the facts here. I exist in the United States in this world. Canada doesn't seem to exist as far as I'm concerned, and I'm a U.S. citizen. Yet he claims that it's just to the north of the U.S., a very simple area that I've been to. I've been into the north of the U.S., and I have seen no Canada. He is ignoring all the facts and evidence that there is. He cannot be reasoned with, nor
Objection.
Canada.
Objection.
Well, Blue does bring up a valid point. May I
I
ask
brought up
if
a valid objection.
Yes, you did. But Blue has also brought up a valid objection. Have you ever been to Canada?
Of course I have. It's to the north. He just didn't go far enough north. Am I supposed to base my argument around how far Vitamin A is willing to go? Just because he gets a little tuckered out around Chicago means that Canada doesn't exist? Absolutely ridiculous.
Can you go on about your experiences in Canada?
Yeah, I went there. I noticed they've got a flag with a leaf on it, so that's not something you'd see in the United States. I noticed several people, both living and dead. And I noticed that you could pretty easily sneak in from the United States border.
Ooh, that's an interesting point. Team Blue, do you think that Red's claim to have seen dead individuals in Canada undermines his point?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it undermines his point, but it really doesn't make it a good point. It makes it a bad one. So I don't know if that's what undermine means or not, but it definitely does do something. And
Can you sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, I'm typically interrupted by a very rude moderator, but really, I think the biggest problem that we have is the idea that there are borders. I mean, if there were borders, and if I just, could just go over to Canada via those borders, then you would think I'd be able to do it. But I saw no borders when I went up into the northern of the U.S. I went plenty far. There's not any farther to go. I mean, I actually saw a black void space up in the north of Chicago, and it's definitely not because Chicago is just that bad of a place, but it's definitely because there's just nothing beyond it. There's no existence of a land beyond Chicago.
I see. Red, that is a good point that Blue brings up. If there is a border, why is it so permeable? Does that not, in fact, evidence that the border does not exist and therefore Canada does not exist?
I think it's possible Vitamin A Bullet just didn't know where he was. After all, I went to the United States-Canada border and I didn't see him there. So we can't even prove for a fact that he went anywhere near the north of the United States. We can't prove that he himself even exists. Maybe the reason he's not able to see the real life effects of being in Canada is because he doesn't have a real life. And I think that's something that we need to explore a little bit more.
Do you think that if he does not have a real life, that he is technically immortal because he cannot die, because he has no life to lose?
I think being immortal still implies having some form of life, just a never-ending life. He's never lived at all.
Vitamin A Bullet, Team Blue.
Yeah.
Have you lived?
Well, that's really a complicated and philosophical, yep, that word exists, question. But I really think that it doesn't matter that much if, I am living or not. I mean, it's really up to interpretation now, isn't it? Like I said, it's very philosophical, and I like Phil, but I like sophical more. and really, it's just an irrelevant question. I just don't think it has any bearing at all on whether Canada exists or not, ultimately.
Do you think that that if you are in fact immortal, that it would have bearing on whether or not Canada exists?
No, I don't think anything is relevant to Canada, really, because if Canada was existing already, then why would it matter if I lived or died?
It would matter to us.
Well, I sincerely doubt that. But I'll choose to believe you for now. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and say that Canada it doesn't exist. There's no more debate to it as far as I'm concerned. I'm pretty sure we've spent all the evidence and options and reasoning and everything that we could possibly go through to actually explore whether or not Canada exists. And yeah, just nope.
And that's convenient because we're almost out of time. Do you have any final statement, Red?
Yes, I think that if you're trying to determine what does and doesn't exist, listening to a man who doesn't know even if he himself exists, it's probably a pretty futile exercise. I feel like we should stick to what really exists in the real world, like the United States and Canada, as opposed to made-up figures like Vitamin A Bullet.
Blue, do you have any final statement?
Well, I believe that existence is really a philosophical question. And really, the only way to answer this is to have a stroke, because there's no other way to say what I just said right there.
All right, you have it, audience. Vote in the hashtags on Twitter. Go Team Red or Go Team Blue. We'll have the results next episode. Thanks for listening. That went pretty well, I thought.
No.
My dog's entertained.
What did you think, Mean Elephant?
I had fun. I really thought I was just going to be like kind of the straight man in this and just talk about the facts, but I really loved pivoting to just Vitamin A Bullet doesn't exist and therefore his argument is false.
Do we want to do one with vitamin moderating?
I'm down.
I'd be up for it.
What's the issue that we're discussing?
Let me think. Whether or not skin pigmentation is something that we are making up or actually exists. I don't know. That's my.
I think it's a little too outre for the stream.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but okay.
That could get out of hand.
Oh, okay.
Can I cite Wikipedia in an academic study or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so clear preface. I haven't done this before, so I'm just going to open up how I guess I think it might open up based off of what I've heard before.
Hey, who's red and blue, and who's arguing what?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I guess you, Mufasa, will be red this time, and Elephant will be blue this time.
The elephant is there. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just you'll be yes, Mufasa.
Okay.
That you can cite it, and Elephant will be no.
Works for me.
All right, so do you want me to basically just start?
Yep.
Okay. All right, welcome to this very intriguing debate that will very clearly get a ton of views all around the world and get all kinds of media attention for its intriguing and interesting topics. The topic of today will be, can a person cite Wikipedia in an academic paper? Now, first off, we're going to be introducing Mr. A.T. I guess. So, Mr. A.T., will you explain to us your position on whether people can cite Wikipedia in academic papers?
Yes, I believe people can cite Wikipedia in academic papers.
Okay, why is that? What makes you think that Wikipedia is an adequate place to present in an academic paper?
Oh, we're getting right into it. I thought we were just giving our intro statements.
Okay, well, I thought that was going to be an intro statement of some kind, but I guess not. So, M-E-I-H, Mia, what do you think about being able to cite Wikipedia in an academic paper? I'm assuming you'd be on the no position. It would be quite strange if, he was on the yes end and you were on, the yes end. So I'm assuming it's no, correct?
It is no. Thank you very much. I was invited. They asked, raise your hand if you think Wikipedia can't be cited in an academic study. And I said, actually, I think it might. And then they said, come up anyway. So here I am, arguing the no position, I guess.
Okay, perfect. That sounds exactly the level of planning that we need here. So, Matt. Matt,
Yes.
I'll just call you Matt for now, even though the M was supposed to be Mr. That's okay, though. What exactly makes you come to the conclusion that you can cite Wikipedia in academic papers?
Well, the very fact that it exists, it's a source, it's textual, it has information content, and it has ability to be cited in any of the myriad paper forms that exist for bibliographies. So, since it is theoretically possible to do, it is definitely possible to do. Whether or not you should is another matter, but strictly speaking, it is possible to cite Wikipedia in an academic context.
Okay, Mia. Do you believe that it is possible indeed to cite Wikipedia in an academic paper? And if so, do you think one should?
I just don't think it's a very good idea because I think it definitely makes you look sort of lazy. I feel like Wikipedia is always the first result on a Google search, so it clearly shows that you didn't put a lot of research into it. You just grabbed the first thing you saw and didn't really think about it. It shows that you're not truly an academic of sorts. Not a very professional one.
All right, well, you don't need to be so rude to the moderator. I did absolutely nothing to you, but that is
no,
your
I do
answer.
believe
That
you
exists.
do it, and I know that you're a bad person, yes.
Okay, that's better. I actually like that answer more. Now, Matt, do you think that your opponent's position, no matter what it may be, really, in this case, has any validity in its argument whatsoever?
No, I don't. I mean, I know that there are some Wikipedia articles that are unsourced, but Wikipedia does do its best to make sure that articles are sourced and accurate. And in fact, a 2012 study found that the Encyclopedia Britannica has about the same error rate in its article facts as Wikipedia does in a meta-controlled study of 1,000 articles from each source. So therefore, given that Wikipedia is a cited source and that it does have peer review and the ability to correct errors quickly, I believe that it is, in fact, a superior source to something like, say, Britannica, because it can be more up-to-date as opposed to Britannica, which is a print source and not an online source. So I think that it's actually superior. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I didn't get to let you finish.
I think it's actually superior in that you can get the bleeding edge reporting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Encyclopedia Britannica. I think that's just made up. I don't think those are real words. But Mia, what about your position? Do you really think that Encyclopedia Britannica are real words? And whether or not that's relevant to the conversation is another matter. But really, what is your overall response outside of that?
I find generally that errors found in Encyclopedia Britannica are figures of being a little out of date, which can happen with anything that's written on paper in ages. Wikipedia is more generally filled with purposefully wrong facts from vandals or people who maybe are a little overconfident on what they're talking about, and oftentimes having a figure being off by a few because it's changed over time versus a figure that's flagrantly wrong is a big difference. So even though the error rates are numerically the same, the consequences of citing one over the other are very different. I would also like to bring up that our moderator vitamin A bullet doesn't exist, so just wanted to remind people about that.
All right. Well, no need for any baseless accusations here, but
Shut up,
I think you're
nerd.
just making up more. Yeah, that was very, very difficult for me to say. Baseless. That is a very long word. I almost thought it was made up for a second there too. But Matt.
Yes.
I assume you disagree with that statement, correct?
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
don't think that your existence has any bearing on whether or not Wikipedia is a citable source. Just because you don't have an article on Wikipedia does not mean that you do not exist. There are lots of things that don't have articles. And in fact, Wikipedia has notability guidelines as to what constitutes something notable and worthy of inclusion or not. And just because something doesn't meet those standards doesn't mean it does not exist. As to the point about the consequences of errors, an error is an error. If something is out of date, that could still be a significant error. So I really don't see what drawing a distinction between errors due to being out of date and errors due to being vandalized are. I know Wikipedia has page protection policies and bots that watch pages and undo vandalism. And several newspaper studies I can think of, including studies from the New York Times, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and the Los Angeles Times, have found that deliberately introduced errors in an effort to test Wikipedia's speed of data recovery were fixed within 15 minutes in all cases.
Okay, well, I just asked you if you disagreed. I didn't ask for you to elaborate. But since you did, would you be able to elaborate further on these newspapers? What exactly are these?
These newspapers are basically piles of really thinly sliced dead trees with ink on them that people used to buy, and they would read it in the morning or on their lunch break, and sometimes they would write on them, and it was how they would get their news. It's interesting that you bring this up because my opponent talks about being out of date, while newspapers are inherently a little bit out of date because they only have information on what happened up to the previous day. So they could not get the bleeding edge thing, and their information is often out of date by virtue of being physical media. So I believe that's a point in my favor and in Wikipedia's favor.
Well, it's certainly interesting. I mean, trees and ink just sound unsanitary to me. But what do you think, Mia? Do you think that's a valid point that Matt has over here? Or do you think that something about newspapers that he was mentioning that I wasn't really listening to, but that's okay?
I think part of the reason you weren't listening was because you, the person, don't exist. And if I could talk about that for a little bit more, because Mufasa brought up the issue of vitamin A's notability, but I would like to bring up that Vitamin A Bullet does in fact have a Wikipedia page that I've just now created, and all it states is that he is a common myth that people talk about occasionally online, but doesn't actually exist as a person. So that's an example of an unsourced Wikipedia article that exists, and is in fact in itself sort of an instance of vandalism on there that might have a real effect to people like our moderator who may or may not exist, but we don't know because there's no citation on this article.
Okay, now I really do think you're making up words now with just like saying citation. What is that? What does that even mean? Does that mean like you want to go to a website and Asian? Like I don't get what that is. But Matt, what about you? diving away from the topic of whether or not I exist, really, because it's really just irrelevant at this point. What do you think about Wikipedia articles that Mia is making for no apparent reason? Matt, are you still there?
Oh, I thought you were talking to Mia. I'm sorry.
I mentioned Mia, but I don't know if I ever actually said Matt. I don't know. But
Yes.
I guess I'll rephrase the question just to make it clear. Mia is making Wikipedia articles on something that is completely irrelevant to the topic conversation. What do you think about that? Because I'm not very clearly deflecting here.
Well, I can say that I'm looking at your article right now, and user Wikipedia moderator 105 has tagged it for speedy deletion for being unnotable and unsourced. So I think that's a really good demonstration of how the Wikipedia moderation policy is actually effective. There's a big box in red at the top that states the problems with the article and that it will be deleted if edits are not made to source it and show its notability.
Yes, I agree with you there completely. So, with all that stated, any final comments do you have, Mia?
I do, yes. I know this looks like I've been put in a bad place, so I have had to edit it. Just a little bit. Most of my claims are the same, but I have added one source, which I'll link right here. And I think that that was hopefully enough to restore this article's credibility, but I don't know. Obviously, it'll be up to the Wikipedia moderators. We've got a source article now that I've just written myself with a single YouTube link as a source. So we'll really, with a single YouTube link as a source, so we'll really see how seriously they take these kinds of things.
Oh, yes, very seriously indeed. What about you, Matt? Do you have any particular final comments?
Yes, I believe that the editorial editing policy on Wikipedia will win the day and that we can see that this article will be removed for being complete and utter crap. And I think that will be a good testament to the fact that Wikipedia is a peer-reviewed and monitored source that can be used in scientific contexts. And if I can make one final point, how can you do research about Wikipedia without citing it yourself?
Oh, yes, that sounds like a very good point that I'm not going to answer for you guys because it's probably up to interpretation. Well, that's all for this show that we made up on the spot that we didn't really make up. It's very much existing. And I don't actually remember if I'm supposed to choose a winner or not. So if I could have a whisper yes or no somewhere in one of my ears for no apparent reason,
No.
then okay. Then I guess we'll just wrap this up and see you next time on the show about debates.
That was good.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn to be moderator.
Actually, I got to hop off because I have a phone call coming in. So
All right.
I apologize.
No worries.
Okay. No problem.
Mean Elephant, thanks for having us stream.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Sorry that I got to cut and run. I just got to answer this phone call.
No worries.
All right, you have a good one, guys.
You too.
All right, that's all for now. Don't forget we play something every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we also play improv games in the style of Whose Line Is It Anyway every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch all our past games at whoseline.club. You can watch us live on Twitch, whoseline.club, and you can join into future games using Discord. Link to join is on whoseline.club. I think that's all. Am I missing anything?
Hey, so it looks like when I called him back, he said he was on the phone with somebody else, so I've got about 20 minutes if you want to do one.
I just did the full outro. Let me undo that, I guess.
Just like say it in reverse.
All right, what's our debate topic?
Whether or not Mufasa was an idiot for doing what he just did. I'll argue yes.
All right, fair enough. Is that the one we want to do for real?
Why not? I got. Oh, sorry.
How open? They can't be very open-ended things like debating on how many people it would take to screw in a light bulb, for example. We can't debate that, right?
No, we could.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we could.
I just suggested mine because I felt bad, and I got to poke fun at myself. We could do the light bulb one if you wish.
I don't know. I don't really have any particularly good ideas that I can think of at the moment. I'm fine with whatever, though.
All right, yeah, I'll do how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb?
All right, let's get started.
Welcome back to Debate Extreme. Today's topic is how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? I'm with, on red team, Mufasa, who will be saying, how many people do you think it takes to screw in a light bulb?
1.
All right, 1. That's an interesting number. It's very low, arguably one of the lowest amounts of people there are. Vitamin A Bullet, how many people do you think it takes to screw in a light bulb?
A minimum of 15.
A minimum of 15. Mufasa, why don't you elaborate? Why do you think it only takes one person to do what some have said is a 15-person job?
Well, it's really simple. There's a light bulb and a socket. You just take it, you unscrew the light bulb that's burned out, you put the new one, then you screw it in, and then you hit the switch and the light turns on. Simple. No need to overcomplicate things. You get a bureaucracy involved, and the light's going to while they cut through all the red tape and kill about 30 trees full of paperwork.
Well, that's true. So, would you say that anyone more than that one person is not an essential part of that team?
I would say, in the general case, yeah, that they're not essential. I mean, it's like this whole COVID-19 thing. Like, the essential people are the healthcare workers, the restaurant workers, the bankers, the people who make movies, the people who sell things on Etsy, and it's kind of like that. You only really need one person to do a light bulb. It's not like a community task that needs 40 people, well, that needs 14 other people, let's say, to get done. Somebody can do it in the privacy of their own home.
Okay, and Vitamin A Bullet, you said at least 15. Could you clarify what the roles of those 15 people are?
Yes. So you have plenty of working parts, moving parts that are trying to put in this light bulb, which is incredibly precise. It has its own ridges. I know, long word. I'm very smart. And really, you need a ton of people, firstly, just to even get up to the light, because the light couldn't. Usually they're not, 2 feet away like a regular lamp or anything like that. Those don't exist yet. Instead, most of them exist on a ceiling, and that takes very many people to climb on, first off, so that takes probably at least 4 people. And then you also have the inner workings of trying to ensure that these ridges on these light bulbs, again, I know, long words, very smart, actually line up with the lining that is in the holder of whatever light bulb it is. And that needs at least 3 people just to visually line all of that up. The rest of the people usually come in moral support or as backups for like the people who may fall in trying to support someone to put in the actual light bulb itself, or even backups for looking at the light bulb ridges and making sure they all line up. There's a lot of complex inner workings to putting in a light bulb, screwing it in.
Okay, could you clarify what's something that you feel a one-person light bulb specifically wouldn't be able to do? Like a one-person light bulb replacer wouldn't be able to do.
Well, they wouldn't be able to go 10 feet in the air. I mean, the highest jump that exists is probably less than 6 feet, if I had to guess. And that's in the world. That's not just for your average person. So they need to get up to the ceiling. You know, that's a pretty long way up there. That's like 10 feet or so, or something like that. Maybe even bigger, depending on your house. Longer. So yeah, there's no way that a single person would be able to do that.
Mufasa, can I ask, what's your solution to all these drawbacks with your single-person light bulb routine?
I would question his premises, because I can change the light bulbs in my kitchen without even needing to get on my tiptoes just fine. So in the general case, it's not nearly as arduous a task as my opponent makes it seem to be.
But certainly there are situations where there are light bulbs you can't reach.
True, in which case you would need simply to get a ladder or a bucket truck, or you would have to free climb, which OSHA rules do permit doing. But still, one person could do it.
Vitamin A Bullet, I have to ask, have you considered the use of outside tools instead of adding additional people?
Well, the problem with outside tools is that they're completely unreliable. I mean, you get a ladder out 1 second, and then it's collapsing underneath your feet the next because it has no legs to stand on, because it's just a board. That's all a ladder is. So, you're just going to end up just planting your foot on this board, and it just goes all the way down to the floor. I mean, that's all tools are useful for, because they're not useful. They're not well built. There's not a good variety of them. They are not built with metal and other things on the side or anything like that, or anything to climb on. Those just don't exist right now. So really, the only reliable way to get up to a light bulb that is of any real standing, or further than standing, because we're talking about higher than standing, is just using people to do it.
Do you believe that it's possible for a person to be, less reliable at... Do you think it's possible for a person to be less reliable at holding someone than a tool specifically built for holding people?
Well, does a scooter fart in the mouth of a monkey? I mean, I don't know. That's my answer.
Okay, Mufasa, do you believe that ladders are sufficiently safe and reliable, more so than people?
Yes, because ladders can't get tired. I'm kind of seeing now where my opponent's coming from, because obviously the tools that he's familiar with have not advanced since the Stone Age. But that also calls into question how he knows what the heck a light bulb is. But the thing is, modern tools are more reliable and safer, so they would be sufficient to help in these cases.
Mufasa, how many times would you say you've utilized a ladder or a bucket truck or a free climb?
Well, I could easily say at least 15 last year.
And
that's just last year.
And Vitamin A Bullet, counter for us. How many times have you changed a light bulb using your 15-person maneuver?
Well, so far it is working. We are on our way up, and soon it'll be pretty well screwed in, probably by the end of the year.
But this
I
is
think
your
there's
first
a lot
time
of
doing
progress to be
it.
made. What'd you say?
But this is your first time doing it, or?
I mean, I've tried it before, so
But
no.
not successfully.
I mean, details really. I mean, there's a lot of progress that's been made since, the last 5 months that we've been trying it. I think we're going to end up getting this really soon.
All right, and now I open it up for final comments. Mufasa?
Yeah, you just need one person to do the job. Anything else can be accomplished by the use of tools.
And Vitamin A Bullet.
Tools are not useful enough. There's not enough variety, and they just don't really exist in the way that we wish they did. And because of that, we have to use humans.
All right, thank you very much. I think we did it.
Well, one last thing.
I've gotten so much use out of that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about the leaving and returning thing. It was the person who called me, then he got a phone call that he needed to take, and he was going to be on it for at least 20 minutes. So I was able to come back and do that. So I'm sorry you did the whole outro already.
No worries. I guess I'll do it again. Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or does someone else want to do the outro? I don't know.
You can do it.
All right, that's all we have for you today. Don't forget, we do Whose Line style games every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we play something every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch all our past games at whoseline.club. You can watch us live at whoseline.club, and the link to join the Discord for future games is available at whoseline.club. Is there anything else I missed?
No, I think that's it. All right, guys, you have a good one. For real this time.
All right, you too.